And we are live. It's another great day with Cribl TV. So glad to have this live stream. We are privileged to have the leaders of the Cribl security team join us. We have Myke and Rory, and Myke is our new CISO. Has been anointed the special person, the lead executive, the head honcho in charge of security. Rory's the one doing the actual hard work. And so we're going to have a great little introduction here. We're so glad that Myke's with us. Myke, so tell me about yourself. What's a little bit of a background?
Well, I've been a CISO a couple times, and I got my security start actually in the logging space. So Cribl translates quite well, to my background in security, and specifically in SIM development. Maybe dating myself and saying it was more SIM back then, and then they sort of mashed the words together. Funny enough, I actually know some people that have been at Cribl for a little while in all different roles, and everywhere I looked, I was hearing good, better, and great stories about us.
That's awesome. It's great to have you here. And so, can you share? Tell me what's a great story. You've been at Cribl at 30, 40 days so far.
30 exactly today.
There you go. So what struck you as different about Cribl? Can you have a fun story to share?
Absolutely. Well, I had the luxury of joining Cribl, and within a couple of weeks of joining the company, going to CriblCon, our user conference. I've been to a bunch of user conferences in my life. I've been in the industry for a fair bit. I have to say the level of attendees that attended the CriblCon were just off the charts. There were some of the best known companies you could only imagine, some of the biggest and baddest and largest companies in the world that were relying on us, and then the customer presentations. My former company that I used to work for, ServiceNow, was on one of the stages doing a presentation, and it was just interesting to see the dynamic between what they were passionate about, what they were gaining from Cribl, and then also what the audience was like. I want some of that, and just watching the energy and the excitement. And then going to product user conferences, a lot of times they sort of talk just about certain components of the existing product. It was good to see some of the enhancements that were being announced, and how well they were received. Things like Cribl Lake were exceptionally well received.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think the thing that always struck me, and this is from being one of Cribl's first customers, is how these things address my needs, things that I'm concerned about. They're not just features or something that's nice to have or something that might be fun or something like that. It's actually something I want, something I need, and I think that's something that's going to be very important for Cribl to continue, because it's just serving the needs of their customers is what matters.
Solving real problems, I think that was a theme that I saw for folks, and just being able to reduce some of their costs in some ways, getting more streamlined, and just frankly, logs can be noisy, and having the context within logs is just a significant improvement over what's been done historically.
Yeah, I was always shocked. I've never had the ability now that I can have less data and better data at the same time. And that's something that you kind of seems like, that's impossible. But when you start using something like Stream and the various Cribl tools, you're like, wow, that works.
Absolutely. One live demos as well was fun to watch. There's always that looming threat of a live demo going sideways. But it was awesome to watch. The CEO up there plugging away at a live demo, and it going with just the tiniest little hiccup, a security hiccup. Imagine that. We timed out the session. Love when that happens.
Absolutely. Hey, it's great to have you. Great to have you at the company. Thank you for being on the live stream. I really appreciate it. So, Roy, tell me a story. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ed. I'm Rory McEntee. I manage the product security team at Cribl. I got my start in application/product security about 11 years ago. Before that, I was in the physical security business in the U.S. infantry. InfoSec is a little bit easier on the knees.
We're not people either, so that's something else.
Yeah, that's right. And we also have fantastic veterans here too, but that's a story for another time. I've been at Cribl for about just under a year and a half now, and fortunately, a lot of the work was done before me. Like, I inherited a fantastic team already, well embedded in engineering, and And really all we needed to do is like really formalize and polish, a lot of processes. But it's very fortunate that that team has existed from very early on, because I mean we are building a very security sensitive product, and uh, actually that's kind of the topic of today's discussion is talking about a secure SDLC. I do want to share one small story though. I remember early on in my career, my first employer, we were really stretched thin for SIM licensing, and unfortunately, we weren't able to monitor everything that we wanted to, and we had all of this unnormalized data in our elk stack that it basically nobody was following the logging standards, so we couldn't import the data. So a lot of the data into the SIM, even if we had the licensing for it, and so when I first learned about Cribl, like about like a year and a half ago, I was like, man, that would be a really cool company to work for. Like they were really making things that help out security and IT teams. So yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, when I first saw Cribl in 2018, it's like, what? You mean I can solve this and do it a lot less effort? Like this is something everyone should have. And it's kind of crazy. 5 years later, here I am. So I mean, it's something else. So here, let's talk about why we're here today. I really appreciate what y'all are doing, but I think it's important that the idea of secure by default, I think it's very meaningful. Too oftentimes, security is added on the back end. It's always going to be reactive, and it's typically just going to be a struggle. So I like the idea of like baking in security into the SDLC. So can you go into a little detail and talk about the program, because I think there's some really good nuggets of information here.
Mike, do you want to start, or should I take a stab at it?
Yeah, why don't Rory? Why don't you start, and then I'll just kind of maybe, because I'm only the 30-day person here, so I'll maybe just weigh in after with just what I've seen and heard, having been in around the world for a bit.
Sounds like a plan. So our founders have a strong engineering background, and our executive team, most of them have a strong engineering background. They already know the importance of having a product security team and a secure SDLC. A forcing function, however, is definitely our customers. The customers that we sell to, they demand that we build secure our software. It's not even up for debate. And you know what? Like when I get time with our leaders, I just express gratitude. We have the people, the processes, and tools needed to build secure software. Actually, Cribl is the best company I've ever worked for. But anyway, so if you want to build a successful security program, you have to attune your processes to the way the business operates. You have to know what the teams, you have to know them, what they own, what they don't own, the tools that they use, and find ways to integrate with them and document how to send them work. If they work in Jira, don't send them a ServiceNow ticket. Certainly don't send an email. It's important to respect the agile process. We work with our product organization to ensure that initiative level work is planned for. But vulnerability tickets, we send them directly to the engineering teams, and we have a process defined so that the most severe vulnerabilities get prioritized first, often release blockers, and then the lows. You have to make sure that they're still fixed, they're still a priority, but we have to focus on what is the most important. And we have to make sure that we send them like the details that we need, like clearly documented repro steps, remediation guidance, make it easy on our engineering teams, and make sure that we're doing at the very least annual secure code training, and making sure that the training content is meaningful and tailored to Cribl's engineering team.
I think Rory, as you're kind of going through these things, common themes that I'm finding to help with a lot of these cycles are going to where engineering is when it comes to these pieces of information, these nuggets of information. I think as an industry, what's been changing for the better is that engineering culture has been improving and recognizing some of the more significant importance that security plays in their ability to do their job, right? If you build a piece of software and it's not secure, it's really complicated to adopt it, and really complicated to deploy it. And you also are, in many cases, you're trying to get people to advocate for your software. And in those instances, if it's not safe, it reflects poorly on them. And I think one thing that's struck me so far has been the how closely integrated the product security team, your team, Rory, and the engineering team are, and how they continuously work, very well together. And I think a lot of that has to do with bringing the information to them appropriately. And then maybe one other part of that that I'm hearing is it used to be able to take an issue that you've detected and almost throw it over the fence. That's kind of the way it had been done for so long, and that's unfortunately how a lot of organizations still do it. But engineers are asking more for detail. Like, hey, can you tell me, why this is exploitable, or why I should do something about this? There's an increasing desire to understand what this particular vulnerability could do when exploited in some way. So there's a better respect for risk in the security development lifecycle, I think, than there was previously, and it's refreshing to hear that. We still have a long way to go, though.
We try to take a little bit of a white glove approach. Really offer, because our first tier customers are internal to the organization. It's the engineering organization, and in order to maintain their respect and to get their attention and prioritization of the work that we send them, we have to be able to willing to do the legwork and do the investigation and make sure that what we're sending to them is ranked appropriately, and if it's even, we certainly wouldn't want to send a false positive over. So we make and really the long game here, the 10,000 foot view, is that we have to deliver secure software to our customers, and there's no appetite for even the perception of risk. And it's not only the software that we write, but the third party components that we include in our software. And we can talk a little bit about supply chain security later on in the discussion, but it's every day we have a cut. And we don't talk about a white paper that we recently published. These questions with every prospect come up. How does your SDLC work? How do you ensure that you've got security and quality in line, so that we are getting not only an awesome product, but a secure product?
Right, and I think those are really great points, and especially about working with the engineering team from the ground up as they build code, so that way it's not just a process that you're looking at it once they're finished. You're looking at every step of the way in order to promote security. I think as too oftentimes you're mentioning it's done on the backside, and then you're saying, hey, there's a problem, you have to start over again. And so starting with engineering early in the process and creating that secure by default design, I think is an ideal way to do something like this. Because as you mentioned, our biggest customers are some of the most high profile security teams in the world. And so it creates a certain amount of expectation that we produce a secure product.
I think from a partnering perspective, it's also important, right? Our customers are consuming software, but they don't want to have to do a ton of stuff to make it safe for their business. Once they've consumed it, they want to be able to quickly plug it in, and that partnership that we have with them is important, because it can go away quickly if we're not working closely with them.
So one thing I want to ask about is, this seems very similar to the NIST SSDF program. So can you talk a little bit about that? Why is it important, and your journey to implement that inside of Cribl?
So, National Institute of Standards and Technology developed a secure software development framework, SSDF, which provides guidelines to follow to ensure that software is developed securely and remains secure throughout the lifecycle. So it's basically implement these processes, and that's not a guarantee that your software is secure. But if you do it well, you are going to get more secure software. You're going to have less vulnerabilities, and they're less. You extremely reduce the odds of something horrible happening.
Can you give some examples of these processes?
Sure, threat modeling. Before anything is coded in the design process, you want to understand what it is you're building. What is your end state architecture? And then you decompose it, and you work with the team that is building it. What is the worst thing that could happen? Like I didn't come up with this term, but evil brainstorming is something that is commonly used. And then you work with the team that's building it to anticipate, well, what if, we have to make sure that we're using TLS. We have to make sure that we're using input validation. You know, you can use like certain frameworks like Ride to help guide the conversation, but you really need to understand the technologies you're using and the associated risks with them, so that you can really just and you take the output of a threat modeling session, you document it in tickets as security as requirements early on in the SDLC. So you don't get like halfway through development, you start scanning, or you're reviewing the code, and it's like, wait, you've got all these vulnerabilities, and then the engineering team is like, well, I mean, why, you were there with us by the beginning, where were you? Why didn't you call that out? And so it's important that it's not like a scary process too. It's easily taught. It's something that anyone can do. You can threat model anything. You can threat model a vending machine or a parking lot or a building. You just take those principles and you apply it to how you're building software.
Okay. And so I think that's a great. So do you use anything like security champions inside the engineering org? I mean, do you work with leads, or how do you build that base of support inside the engineering org?
I know Mike's really passionate about security champions. You wanna go first?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am. I am passionate about security champions. I think it's a process I've used in my last two organizations, and it's great music to my ears to come here and have Rory and some of his team having within his team running those programs. I think the one of the key attributes of a successful security champions program is so that within each team you do have a person who is within each engineering team specifically. You have a person who's dedicated to helping liaise with the security team, the product security team, or really it could be helping liaise with a researcher who's if there's a bug bounty associated thing or a scanning tool, but just giving them the information, having them advocate for the engineering team, and then vice versa, also advocate for the security team when going back. I think it's absolutely critical for success to have champions. You can't have too many of them, which is great. You typically have a lower adoption. I think everyone gets excited in the beginning, and then it ends up being when they realize there's a little bit of work involved, it tends to have a balance. But giving feedback is really important. It's a great opportunity with champions to encourage them and to hopefully help create more of themselves within engineering teams. I know there's been some interesting developments in software where people are trying to build software to help make champions better program. In my experience of working with a lot of different companies, specifically product security oriented teams within large companies, the ones that have the best most secure software are leveraging security champions.
Yeah, I totally agree. How are you identifying your champions?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about the Security Champions program at Cribl, which has been going on for at least a couple of years now. There's a few ways, and I mean, you will identify security inclined folks throughout your interactions with engineering and other organizations within the company. They can be recommended by managers. They will often self-select. They don't even have to be like super, like have a super security background either. Like really, just give me someone who is curious, who's willing to learn, and is passionate about it, and will educate you and will deputize you, if you will, to at the very least let us know if something doesn't look right. Uh, and it's a program that pays infinite dividends. Like we have security champions that will identify security issues. They'll let us know. They'll ticket for it. We'll make sure that it's tagged and triaged, and then they'll often just take care of it. But at least we know it was there, we can look for other anti-patterns in the source code. Do we need to write a static analysis rule? Do we need to document a secure pattern? Can we do like what is the root cause analysis outcome to determine why was there in the first place? And often it's an education issue as well. And so then we can take topical issues, vulnerabilities that we found or vulnerabilities affecting components that we're using, and we at the very least once a month we'll have a session with our security champions, and we'll educate them, and we're fostering a community of security focused people that act as a virtual extension of your security team, and really that's because your security team is only going to get so big. Security teams are expensive, and they're often treated as a nice to have. Fortunately, that's not the case at Cribl. We are treated as a very important part of the engineering effort. But yeah, and it's wildly popular. We hold CTFs, we reward people, we reward the top performers with gift cards, and they also contribute greatly on we have to do the manual annual coding training, but we get their feedback, and so that we can make sure that we're not giving like the standard off the shelf training every year. We're making sure that it's evolving with the conversation, the tech stack, and making sure that it's relevant to what is being worked on today.
That's great. I mean, you see a lot of places that have security champions, but you don't see this level of engagement, training, continual follow-up. So that's really good to see. That's great news. So anything else you want to share about the security champion program before we move on to the next topic?
I think we can.
If you don't have one, today is the day you can start that process.
There you go.
It's one of the cheapest things you can do, because you don't have to buy a tool. You're going to need someone to run it, so you're going to need a headcount to run it, and you do have to give it some love and attention. But as far as like cost per dollar, like a security champions program is a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So I understand that Cribl now has a bug bounty and vulnerability disclosure program. Can you tell me about that? So when did that program start?
So that started just a few months ago, and really, you want to make sure that you have a secure SDLC and a strong vulnerability management program before you jump into a bug bounty program, or otherwise, everyone's different, every organization's different, but if you want to do it efficiently and cost effectively, you're going to have those processes in place so that when you open up a program with a monetary incentive for researchers to basically investigate, reverse engineer, test your software for security vulnerabilities, you're not paying for things that could have easily been avoided. You're really making them work for their money. But we brought in some of the top security researchers in the world to make sure, look for vulnerabilities in our software. And honestly, you cannot say that your software has been vetted until you bring in this group of people, the top security researchers that participate in these bounty platforms, because they leave no stone unturned, because they don't get paid unless they find something, and they don't just do this for the money. The money is nice, some of them make a good living off of it, but they do it because they're passionate. They're usually folks that are security professionals that are moonlighting, just for a little extra cash on the weekends, but they enjoy doing it, right? Which makes them especially dangerous, and we're glad that they're on our side.
Yeah, there you go.
So you gotta be thoughtful too with the program. To your point about having definitely done a number of things before opening it up, scoping is also a really important part. You don't want people who are testing things not to to be getting into places that they shouldn't be testing. Right? Testing can be impactful, and also if you've launched one of these programs, you should anticipate that you will likely have a massive influx. And so partnering with your security champions team, with your engineering leadership team, to inform them that there's likely going to be an inbound set of new discoveries is very important.
Yeah,
set the expectations and then let it come in let it come in, above those expectations.
When you open up those gates for the first time, there's always a burst of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and that's something. But I mean, there's a lot of there's the downside and upside to everything. I think the upside is definite. It helps you find issues, and so I mean, I think it's a great idea. So one last thing before we're running a little bit tight on time, but especially in the news lately, especially in the security news about supply chain security, guarding especially with using open source packages with popular frameworks. How is Cribl guarding against these packages being poisoned potentially for one reason or another, and then causing a security issue inside of Cribl?
I'm going to start with just generally, Rory, and then feed in with some specifics.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So, yeah, supply chain is from a software point of view is not getting any easier. It's getting more complicated. Understanding and vetting the right things as you bring them in and ensuring that they're well understood are absolutely critical ways to progress with great open source software and move forward with it. Ensuring that people aren't hunting and pecking for things that through the just the general giant ecosystem that's out there, and they know that there's an established framework or an already adopted framework or some additional knowledge within the business on a particular project is really critical. And so that comes down to ensuring that you've got appropriate documentation across your systems, that the teams are sharing with each other and they're having their brown bag lunches and going through some of those things, and also that we have a high quality ability to ensure and to check what is being brought into the system itself. Also, ensuring that you're updating it on a continuous basis is a pretty key element for all software. If you're at a company like Cribl, you're going to be hosting software in your cloud, and there's also going to be things that go into customers' environments. You have to remember that those customers, when the software is in their environments, they also have the ability to do their additional testing, and they have their processes that they're going to go through. And so it's better to know what ingredients are making up the thing that you're going to be sharing with others, and knowing those ingredients very well, where you sourced them and all of those pieces. It's no longer okay just to sort of ship a black box of software. Obviously, the administration has launched things around SBOMs and requirements for those things, but those only go so far. You actually have to do your appropriate vetting of them on top of it. Ingesting and working with SBOMs is not a simple process. There's some interesting software out there that people are using, but for the most part, it's still kind of a compliance oriented thing, and not necessarily oriented towards making the software safer. So it's on you to not just to be able to produce something, but also to be doing something in your practices and your processes and your pipelines as you deliver software.
Yeah, it's a little frightening what's going on these days, especially around package dependencies that can then pull in something that you were not intending to pull in. And so it's just something that I think every company has to pay a lot more attention to.
Even when you intended to do it, right? And probably we could do another hour just talking about the most recent news headlines around some of the packages that have been infiltrated. But clearly, there's folks out there playing a longer game, and they're willing to spend a whole lot of money, and they're getting more sophisticated. So it's going to be on us to work with great open consortiums out there. I'm a fan of OpenSSF. I think that's a great group, run by some good people. I think, getting involved and helping them, and then working with your peer organizations to make the best of it. Rory, you were gonna probably weigh in on some of the specificities to what we're doing here.
Yeah, well, I feel like we talked about dependency confusion and poisoning of packages. Most recently, XZ Utils, which is open source component used in Linux systems. There's a threat actor that spent 2 years infiltrating this team of maintainers, likely state sponsored. They don't know, but if I were a betting man, the backdoor was discovered fairly early, very early actually. So I don't know if there were any examples of it actually being exploited in the wild, but what if it hadn't been? It is really terrifying, and there's also, I mean, well, I won't even get into SolarWinds, but after SolarWinds happened, like a year after, Google released this framework called SALSA, or SLSA, supply chain levels for software. Anyway, or I mean, you think of like software tastes better with salsa or something. You could think of salsa like a food safety standard for a restaurant. Like, you need to understand like where the sourcing ingredients come from, and it's important to cook in a clean kitchen. And then likewise, when building software, like, you need to make sure that you are verifying the source integrity of, especially like third party components, open source software. You want to make sure that you're signing your own artifacts. You're making sure that your CI/CD system is secure, is hardened, that you have RBAC in place. So really, it's definitely like a least privileged system, and of course, never expose it to the internet. Speaking of SolarWinds, if I had a nickel for every time I saw like a CI system getting popped on a pen test, I'd have multiple dollars at this point. Fortunately, like, we know this at Cribl. It's a very specific team that has access to our CI server. We use software composition analysis, or SAA, which Myke is probably could speak to great lengths on, to ensure that we're using the latest and greatest. You might not always have the most cutting edge version of every software component, but you need to ensure that you have the latest security updates. That is not negotiable with customers. And it doesn't even matter if it's reachable or not. And I know that a lot of SCA tools are working on implementing features to see what is reachable, which is handy if you need to know what is really a priority, especially if you have a backlog of issues. But really, and we publish an SBOM with every release. We're very transparent about what goes into our software at Cribl. And in turn, the expectation is with our customers that we maintain those, and we do a really good job of it. I'm really proud to say.
That's great. I mean, and I think it's just something that I'm just glad we're paying attention to it and meeting the needs of our customers. So I understand that you have a secure SDLC white paper that's now available for download. Do you want to talk about it real quick?
Yeah, just very briefly. I've done this at previous organizations. You put the most commonly asked questions about an organization, Cribl, organization's SDLC, into like a single white paper, and you can share it with prospects and customers, and maybe they want to dive in deeper. But it is an effort to ensure that one, it cuts down on cycles to like the sell cycles specifically, because that information is self-service, it's all up front, but it shows that the organization cares, and we care about building secure software, and we've invested a lot of money and effort to make sure that that is true. So I feel like it would be silly not to advertise it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for anyone looking, we have the URL for the download below, or go to the Cribl website under resources and white papers to find Rory's paper. It's a great resource. It's very clearly written, and it's a great place to get your questions answered. Really, really appreciate it. So I understand also that beginning July 16th, you're going to start releasing a security blog series. So can you tell me about that? I mean, are you going to write everything? Is it, or are you going to have your whole team handle it?
Oh, not me. I mean, it's gonna be the whole security team has been invited to participate. We've got at least 4 drafts in line, but I've never been in an organization where engineering has asked me to write marketing content. I mean, give me a soapbox and like I'll talk about security all day. Usually it gets to the point where it's very annoying, but maybe that's why they thought I was a good candidate for it. But yeah, we've been encouraged as a security organization to create blogs, and we're very proud of the work that we do. And it's really cool that like we sell a lot to security teams as well, because our message resonates with them. Is, it's a niche thing. Not everyone is interested in that. Not every customer of Cribl is a security team, but it definitely resonates with a good deal of our customers.
Yeah, I think I would safe to say it resonates with all of them. So I'm really glad it's doing it. So let's wrap this up a little bit. So having some closing remarks. Myke, you want to go first?
I'd love to. First and foremost, our program we talked about today is one of the security programs that we have here. And so I'd employ or invite anyone to go to our trust portal if they're interested in learning more about the security program that we have here. There is an opportunity to go through with an NDA and get access to a whole bunch of documentation for the right reasons. We have NDAs in place for some things, but not all things require an NDA. Also, if you see a defect in our products or on our websites or any of our properties, please, by all means, this is why we had the vulnerability disclosure program. Leverage it. We're here. We want to know about it before the bad people. There are rewards, so it is you are incentivized to have a look. And please, before you do have a look, obviously read our policy because we do have some scoping data points in there. But 30 days in, I couldn't be more excited to be at a company that is just so great and working with some of the best companies I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And I'm looking forward to way more than just 30 days more of continuing to work with you all.
Hey, that's great. So glad you're here. Roy, why don't you bring us on home?
And just to add to that, our vulnerability disclosure program, which, as Myke said, anyone can contribute to, can be found at cribl.io /vulnerability-disclosure-program. But don't worry, it's going to be linked in the blog. It's going to be linked in the white paper. So we're going to be advertising it broadly. And honestly, look, if there is a defect in our software, we want to know about it, right? And it will get it fixed. We are a very customer-driven organization, and well, fortunately, security just exists in this place where it's like you can objectively say that is a bad practice a lot of the time. There's always like a little bit of gray push and pull area, but what I love about my craft is that it is pure in that sense. So that's all for me, I think.
Hey, that's well said. I really appreciate it. And for everyone in the audience, we really appreciate your time. If you want to join the Cribl community, go to cribl.io/community, join our Slack community, over 6,000 strong. Ask your questions. The security team's there. I'm there. The development team's there. We're always here to help. So thank you. We look forward to doing this again soon. Take care.